Hey everyone, my name is Miriam Strauss. Welcome back to my channel where we talk about money making and money saving tips. In today's video, we're going to be doing something a little bit different, and I'm going to be sharing the story of how I grew up poor in New York City. My parents are both descendants of Jewish immigrants who immigrated from Eastern Europe because of the Holocaust. They were kicked out of Europe. My mother's family was able to escape from Poland to Mexico, and my father's family was able to escape from Nazi Germany to New York. My father was born in New York City, so he is first generation American. My mother was born in Mexico, actually, and then she immigrated over to America when she was about 11 years old. Their parents had a couple of dollars in their pockets at best. They were starting from scratch. My father grew up in a really inner city neighborhood of New York City, just north of Harlem and at the bottom end of Washington Heights. And he told me stories of when he was a child, like he would hear gunshots in the streets. This was like the real gritty parts of New York City in like the 50s at some point. My mother was born in Mexico. She had a good education. My father ended up becoming a chemical engineer. He went to City College. My mother became a biochemist, and she had gotten her bachelor's, her master's, and was on her way to get her PhD and she did all of that on scholarship. Like, my mother is a genius, okay? Like, crazy genius. She actually then fell into a coma for about 8 months, I believe, of her life in her 20s. The doctors think that it could have been because as part of her biochemistry research, she was working with these mice. One of those mice maybe had some type of virus that they transmitted to her. After that coma, she lost a lot of her short-term memory. She couldn't finish her PhD program because of her short-term memory loss. Her legs atrophied. She couldn't walk. She told me that she fell into like this huge depression because her entire life career was essentially taken from her. After that, her mother convinced her hey, maybe you should just focus on finding a man, getting married. And she met my father. They got married 6 months later, and they ended up having 9 beautiful children together. And my mother became a stay-at-home mother, even though she could have been the next Albert Einstein. If you ask me, she was a genius. Anyways, so I definitely came from these parents who worked their butts off, and my mother, because of her coma, wasn't able to work. My father worked as a chemical engineer for many years. Around the year I was born in 1990, he experienced a heart attack and went on disability because of the heart attack and because of, a lot of medical conditions. Since then, he's had prostate cancer. Currently, he has Parkinson's, and all of his motor skills are mostly gone. He also had to stop working when we were fairly young. But the one thing they did raise us with is a value for education. That was always their thing because they were chemical engineers. They were biochemists. They grew up as people who study, people who read, people who learn. Luckily for me, even though my parents were poor, right, even though they didn't have money, and I grew up in Washington Heights, which is an inner city neighborhood in New York City, especially when I was growing up. Now it's kind of on the come up. But I think that what separated me apart from a lot of the other kids who had been growing up in that neighborhood was the fact that my parents really pushed education on us. So they didn't want us going to the local public schools because they thought that the curriculum there wasn't going to be good enough. Unfortunately, in New York City, those schools are often very neglected. But in any case, what my parents decided to do, because my dad's a hustler and was a very wise, educated man, he went to a bunch of local Jewish private schools, and he said, I'm not a very religious person, but I want them to be more religious. And so are you willing to give my kids a full scholarship so that I can raise my kids Jewish? So trying to appeal to their cause a little bit so that we could go to a good school and be around, a certain network of people. In the end, he eventually got us all financial aid to a private Jewish school that was in New Jersey, a real trek away from our house. I remember every single day for so long of my life, the first third of my life, I would trek for an hour and a half in one direction and an hour and a half in another, taking 2 different buses on the way to and from school each day, waiting for buses, being on the buses. I remember moments where I had holes in my shoes because my parents couldn't afford sneakers for me. And I was waiting in feet of snow for the bus, and my toes were frozen through my sneakers just so that I could go to this better school than I would have if I went up the block to PS 187. And I just remember my lips being blue and my fingers turning white waiting in the snow. And sometimes the New Jersey Transit bus would just pass us right by and not even see us at the stop. And we'd have to wait like another hour for the next bus. I mean, it was horrible. Sometimes we didn't have bus fare to pay for the bus and we would walk. We would just keep walking. And sometimes people would be nice and stop and pick us up and ask us where we need to go and drive us as far as they could. Like, basically like hitchhiking with kids to get to and from school. No matter how underprivileged my background was, that is always something that is like one major privilege I got to have, is to go to private school. I definitely got made fun of a lot at my private school for wearing the same shirt a few times in a week. I got ridiculed. I just was treated very differently. Other things that will show you just how poor I was. I didn't have a bed to sleep in. I'm not making that up, okay? We had like 3 beds maybe that whoever fell asleep first would go to it, and then other people would join them. So like you'd have one bed with like 4 different people sleeping in it, sometimes sleeping on the floor with like a pillow. My first bed that I ever owned, I bought myself with money I made when I was 16 years old. I made that money waitressing, and I bought my very first bed, and then I let some of my other brothers and sisters sleep in it with me, because they didn't have a bed yet. We often didn't have food at home. Like my parents would go grocery shopping once a week on Fridays for the Sabbath. And then by Sunday, most of the food in the house was gone. So then during the school week, I ate hot lunch that I got from school for free. And other than that, I didn't eat breakfast. I didn't eat lunch. If I was able to wrangle together a couple of quarters or $1 or $2, I would go to the convenience store on our corner of our street and buy some cookies or potato chips that I would eat for dinner. Food was definitely not always guaranteed. I did not get 3 meals a day. And the food we did have at home was like really simple, easy things, cheap things that didn't cost a lot and you could make a lot of. And I don't blame my parents. Like, they tried really hard. My mother was commuting like 6 hours a day to bring us to like this really good school. You know, I actually started working when I was 12 years old. I remember someone in my class, her parent being like, oh, we're going to have a backyard day camp for the summertime with all these little toddlers. Then she came to me and she said, do you want to be a backyard day camp counselor? I think they were going to pay me like $6 an hour. I don't really remember what it was. But I just remember being like, yeah, I would love that. I would love to make that money. Now I can go buy my own shoes. And I was 12 years old. And that's when I just was like, wow, I'm just going to keep working. I'm just going to keep making money, because all these things I don't get to have, if I work, I can have them, right? I bought my own clothing. I was like, I get to go to the movies with my friends because now I have money to afford a movie ticket. That was when I started to feel like a normal person, when I started working. So I just kept working. I just was always working. In college, I worked 3 different jobs. In law school, I worked 2 to 3 different jobs. I've been an administrative assistant. I've been a waitress. I've been a cocktail waitress. I've done so many really interesting things. And now I'm obviously a lawyer, which is another interesting thing. And maybe one day I'll be a proper YouTuber. But I've always just worked my whole life, because the more I worked, the more I realized how much I would have available to me in life and how much I could finally live the life that I've always wanted to live. The number one privilege that I had because of my school was having exposure to more successful people, right? I think that a big problem with growing up poor is that when you're not exposed to success, you don't know how to achieve success. You don't feel that success is something that is, you know, a possibility. You don't actually know anyone who is successful, right? And so it's hard for you to learn from it, to emulate it, and to feel that it's attainable to you. But for me, I had exposure to a lot of very successful people as a child, and that made it something that was more attainable. I also got to see stories of people who came from similar backgrounds as me, who were really wealthy and really well off and sending their kids to these private schools, understanding that it's something that is attainable and achievable if you really are willing to put in all the hard work that comes along with that, is the biggest privilege that I had as a child. I hope to, through this channel, be able to be the person that if you don't have exposure in your personal life to successful people, I hope that you can tune into this channel and learn all my tricks and trades of how I got to be a successful person. I grew up where, you know, I saw drug dealers selling drugs on the streets, on the corners, coming all the way to this place where I get to work remotely from a beautiful Mediterranean country, making 6 figures a year as corporate counsel. So when I say things like that, I'm not just saying it to brag. I'm saying it because I hope that you understand that this too can be you one day. And I hope that by watching this channel, you find the inspiration to achieve everything that you hope and dream in life. If you enjoyed this video, just give it a thumbs up. You don't have to subscribe. All I really truly ask is that you give it a thumbs up because that means the world to me. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Catch you in the next one.